I'm Maya, 28, female, and my mother told me I wasn't family right after I gave her $32,000 to save her from ruin. That single sentence, sharp and cold, didn't just break my heart. It vaporized a lifetime of trying, of hoping, of believing that one day I would be enough. It was the moment the fog of obligation finally cleared, revealing the stark and ugly truth of my place in the family I had given everything to hold together. My family on the surface looked like any other. There was my mother, Carol, a woman who carried herself with the air of a tragic artist even though she hadn't picked up a paintbrush in years. There was my younger brother, Ethan, the charming, charismatic center of her universe. And then there was me, the quiet, steady planet forever trapped in their gravitational pull, dutifully orbiting a sun that would never truly shine its warmth on me. My boyfriend Leo, a man whose kindness was as solid and dependable as the buildings he designed, had been watching this dynamic play out for 5 years. He saw it in the small things, the constant, subtle ways I was made to feel like a supporting character in my own family's story. He was the one who held my hand when the hurt became too much, the one who gently reminded me that love shouldn't be a transaction. But even he couldn't have predicted the brutal finality of my mother's words. The favoritism wasn't a secret. It was the bedrock of our family. I remember my 10th birthday. I had asked for a specific telescope, having fallen in love with astronomy. I'd circled it in a catalog and left it on the kitchen counter. My mother had smiled and said, "We'll see, sweetie." On my birthday, I received a sensible, generic sweater. 2 weeks later, for no reason at all, Ethan, who was 7, was gifted the latest, most expensive video game console he'd casually mentioned wanting. When I'd looked at my mother, a question in my eyes, she'd simply patted my head and said, "You know your brother, he gets so excited about these things. It's just a joy to see." My excitement apparently was not as valuable. It was a pattern that repeated itself endlessly. When it came time for college, my path was clear. I was to get a scholarship, work part-time, and live at home to save money. I did exactly that, earning a full ride to study computer science at the state university. I worked 20 hours a week at the library, my nights filled with coding and studying. Meanwhile, Ethan's path was paved with gold I didn't know we had. He was sent to a private liberal arts college 3 states away, his dorm fees, meal plan, and spending money all covered. The justification? Ethan needs the full college experience to find himself, Maya. You've always been so mature, so self-sufficient. Self-sufficient was my mother's word for conveniently independent. I wasn't praised for my resilience, I was valued for my lack of neediness. I was the family's fixed asset, the reliable utility. Ethan was the passion project, the high-risk, high-reward investment into which all emotional and financial resources were poured. His failed business ideas were learning experiences. My carefully planned career path was just what Maya does. The most telling incident before the final catastrophe happened when our grandmother passed away. She left each of us a small inheritance, $5,000. I immediately put mine into a high-yield savings account, the seed money for a future I was carefully building with Leo. Ethan, however, saw his $5,000 as capital for his newest venture, becoming a social media influencer. He bought a flashy camera, a designer wardrobe, and a trip to a luxury resort to create content. Within 2 months, the money was gone, with nothing to show for it but a few dozen glossy photos and a credit card bill. When Ethan came to our mother distraught, she didn't scold him, she didn't lecture him on responsibility, she called me. "Maya, honey," she'd said, her voice laced with that familiar, manufactured sweetness. "Ethan is in a bit of a bind. He just needs a small loan to get back on his feet. You have your savings, don't you?" It would mean the world to him, to me. I remember the conversation vividly. Leo was sitting beside me, his jaw tight. "Don't do it, Maya," he whispered. "But the weight of a lifetime of conditioning is a heavy thing to shrug off." I resisted at first, explaining that my savings were for a house, for our future. Her response was a masterclass in emotional manipulation. "A house? Oh, that's wonderful, dear, but family comes first, doesn't it? What is a house if your brother is suffering? I thought I raised you to be more generous than that." The implication was clear. My dreams were selfish, my boundaries a sign of a moral failing. In the end, I relented. I gave Ethan $2,000, half of what he'd asked for, but enough to placate my mother. Ethan took the money with a careless "thanks, sis," and I never saw a dime of it again. The wound from that exchange never truly healed. It just sat there, a festering reminder that my contributions were expected, my sacrifices assumed, and my own aspirations secondary. That was the foundation upon which our family was built. I was the load-bearing wall, silent and strong, holding everything up so that Ethan could be the beautiful, decorative chandelier, sparkling and admired. I just never realized that if the wall ever decided to crumble, the whole house would come crashing down. And I never realized how much I'd one day want to be the one to let it fall. The call came on a Tuesday. I remember because Tuesdays were my favorite day of the week. Leo and I had a standing date night. We just decided on a Thai place we wanted to try when my phone buzzed, flashing mom on the screen. An involuntary sigh escaped my lips. Leo noticed, giving my shoulder a supportive squeeze. "You don't have to answer," he said softly. But it was my mother. The deep-seated programming of a lifetime told me I had to. I stepped out onto our small balcony, the cool evening air a stark contrast to the anxiety already churning in my stomach. "Hi, Mom, what's up?" I tried to keep my voice light. "Maya," she began, and I knew instantly. It was her crisis voice, a fragile, trembling thing she reserved for moments of extreme drama. "Maya, something terrible has happened." My mind raced. Was someone hurt? Was it Ethan? He was prone to reckless behavior. "What is it? Is everyone okay?" "No, we are not okay," she sobbed, and the performance began. "The house, Maya, we're going to lose the house." The air left my lungs. The house was the one constant in our lives. It was the house I grew up in, the one that held every memory, good and bad. It was a modest, three-bedroom suburban home, but it was brick and mortar proof of our family's existence. "What are you talking about?" I asked, gripping the railings. "How?" The story tumbled out in a torrent of tears and self-pity. A few years ago, she had taken out a second mortgage on the house. The reason, to fund Ethan's most ambitious and predictably most disastrous business idea yet, a boutique coffee roasting company. He had convinced her it was a can't-miss opportunity. He designed a logo, rented a small commercial space, and bought thousands of dollars worth of equipment and beans. It had all been funded by the equity I never knew she was gambling with. The business had folded in less than 6 months. Ethan, bored and frustrated that success wasn't instantaneous, had simply walked away from it, leaving a trail of debt. My mother, too proud and embarrassed to admit her golden child had failed so spectacularly, had been trying to cover the massive loan payments herself. She'd been juggling credit cards, taking out payday loans, and slowly, quietly sinking. "The bank sent a final notice," she whispered, her voice cracking. "They're starting foreclosure proceedings. We have 30 days, Maya, 30 days before they take our home." I felt dizzy. The sheer scale of the deception, the recklessness of it, was staggering. She had risked the roof over their heads for one of Ethan's whims. "Where's Ethan in all this?" I asked, my voice colder than I intended. This was his business. What is he doing to fix it? "Oh, Maya, don't be cruel," she chided, instantly defensive. "He feels terrible. He's completely devastated. He's been trying to find work, but it's so hard for him. He's sensitive, you know this. The stress is making him ill." Sensitive, devastated. The words were meaningless shields to protect him from any form of accountability. I could picture him perfectly, sitting on the couch, playing video games while my mother wrung her hands, trying to spin his apathy into artful suffering. "How much?" I asked, cutting to the chase. "How much do you need to stop it?" She hesitated, and then the number came. "The bank said we need to pay off the arrears to even be considered for a loan modification. The total is, it's $32,000. $32,000. The number echoed in the sudden silence. It felt like a physical blow. It was an impossible astronomical sum. And then a sickening realization dawned. It wasn't an impossible sum. It was almost to the dollar the exact amount Leo and I had in our joint savings account. It was our down payment. It was the culmination of 4 years of disciplined saving, of skipped vacations, of packed lunches and careful budgets. It was our future. "Maya, are you there?" My mother's voice pulled me back. "Please say something." I don't have that kind of money, Mom," I lied, the words feeling like ash in my mouth. "Don't say that," she snapped, her fragility instantly replaced by a sharp edge of anger. Of course you do, you and Leo, you've been saving forever, I know you have it. You're a software engineer, for goodness sake, this is nothing to you. Nothing to me, the years of sacrifice, the disciplined choices, the shared dream, all of it dismiss. D as nothing. That money is for a house, Mom, I said, my voice shaking, for my house. And this isn't a house, she shot back. This is your family home, the place you grew up. How can you be so selfish? I'm your mother, I'm begging you. Are you going to let your own mother and brother be thrown out onto the street? The guilt was a physical thing, a heavy cloak she expertly draped over my shoulders. I heard Leo slide the balcony door open behind me. He didn't say anything, but I felt his presence, a silent anchor in the storm of her words. I closed my eyes, the image of that foreclosure notice burning in my mind. The thought of my mother, regardless of her flaws, losing her home was unbearable. The conditioning was too strong, the sense of daughterly duty too deeply ingrained. I was the responsible one. I was the one who fixed things. I need to think about it, I mumbled, my resolve crumbling. There's no time to think, she cried. We have a deadline, Maya. Please do this for me, for your family. I promise I will pay you back every single penny. Ethan will too. This will be the wake-up call he needs. We'll be forever in your debt. Promises, they were always so full of promises. I looked through the glass at Leo. His expression was pained. He knew what was happening. He knew I was being pulled back under. I'll call you tomorrow, I said, and hung up before she could protest. I slid the door shut and collapsed onto the couch, burying my face in my hands. The silence in the apartment was heavy. Leo sat beside me, wrapping his arms around me. He didn't say, I told you so. He didn't pressure me, he just held me. And it's our future, Leo, I whispered into his chest. It's our entire future she's asking for. I know, he said, his voice a low rumble. But it's your decision, Maya. Whatever you choose, we'll face it together. But I just want you to ask yourself one thing. If the roles were reversed, if it was you in trouble, what would she and Ethan do for you? I knew the answer, and the truth of it was the most painful thing of all. The next 24 hours were a blur of sleepless anxiety. I tossed and turned all night, my mother's desperate pleas echoing in my head, intertwined with Leo's quiet, piercing question. What would they do for me? The answer was a cold, hard nothing. They wouldn't just say no, the thought of making a genuine sacrifice for me would likely never even cross their minds. And yet the image of them, homeless and destitute, haunted me. Was I really capable of standing by and watching that happen? I went to work the next day but stared blankly at lines of code, my mind a battlefield. On one side stood reason, championed by Leo and every rational thought in my head. This was a problem of their own making. Giving them the money wouldn't fix the underlying issue, my mother's financial irresponsibility and Ethan's parasitic entitlement. It would be a temporary patch on a sinking ship, and it would cost me my own dream. On the other side was a lifetime of emotional conditioning. I was Maya, the responsible one, the fixer. My value in the family was directly tied to my utility. To refuse would be to abdicate the only role I had ever been allowed to play. It felt less like a choice and more like a fundamental betrayal of my own identity, twisted as it was. My mother's words, "How can you be so selfish?" rang in my ears. She had programmed me to believe that my own needs were inherently selfish. By lunchtime, I couldn't take it anymore. I called Leo, my voice thick with exhaustion. I think I have to do it, I confessed, the words tasting like defeat. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Okay, he said finally, his voice carefully neutral. Can you meet me? Let's talk about it face to face. We met at a small park near his office. We sat on a bench, the midday sun warming our faces, but I felt a chill deep in my bones. I laid out all my fears, all my guilt. I told him I knew it was wrong, I knew it was a mistake, but I couldn't live with myself if I was the reason they ended up on the street. Leo listened patiently, his gaze never leaving my face. When I finished, he took my hand. Maya, he said, his voice gentle but firm. I will support your decision. It's your mother and it's your money we saved together, but if we do this, we need to do it with our eyes wide open. We are not giving them a loan. A loan implies an expectation of repayment, and we both know that will never happen. This is a gift. A $32,000 gift, and it has to be the last one. If we do this, you have to promise me that this is the end. No more bailouts. No more fixing Ethan's mistakes. We draw a line, we save the house, and then we step back for good. His words were a lifeline. He wasn't just giving me permission, he was giving me a strategy for survival. He was helping me see a future beyond this one terrible choice. A line, it was more than I'd ever dared to imagine. Okay. I whispered, squeezing his hand, aligned. That afternoon, I called my mother. I'll do it, I said, my voice flat. The change was instantaneous. Her sobs of despair turned into shrieks of joy. Oh, Maya, I knew I could count on you. You've saved us. You're a wonderful daughter, the most wonderful daughter in the world. I promise things will be different now. Ethan is so grateful. He's right here. He wants to thank you. She put the phone on speaker, and I heard my brother's voice, slick with false sincerity. Wow, sis, you really came through. I owe you one, seriously. I didn't want his gratitude. It was as worthless as his promises. Just send me the bank details for the payment, I said curtly. The next day, Leo took the morning off work and went with me to the bank. The process felt surreal, like an out-of-body experience. I sat with the bank teller, a kind-looking woman with graying hair, and filled out the wire transfer form. My hand trembled as I wrote out the astronomical figure, $32,000. Every digit felt like a piece of my future being chipped away. Account holder Carol Jensen. Amount $32,000. Reason for transfer, family support. It was the most expensive lie I had ever told. This wasn't support, it was an amputation. I was severing a part of myself to keep them whole. As the teller processed the transaction, I looked at Leo. His face was a mask of stoicism, but I could see the pain in his eyes. He was watching the woman he loved sacrifice their shared dream for people who didn't deserve her. It's done, the teller said with a polite smile. The funds should be available in her account within the hour. I walked out of the bank feeling hollowed out, empty. The sun was bright, but the world seemed gray. Leo wrapped an arm around me. We'll rebuild, he said quietly. It'll take time, but we'll get it back. The important thing is that you're free now. We drew the lines. My phone rang almost immediately. It was my mother, her voice effervescent. We got it, Maya. The money is here. Oh, thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm on my way to the bank right now to pay the arrears. You've saved us. We're having a special dinner tonight to celebrate. You have to come. The thought of sitting at a dinner table, pretending this was a happy occasion, made my stomach turn. I can't, Mom, I'm busy. Oh, she said, the lightness in her voice dimming slightly. Well, soon then, we have to celebrate what you did for this family. But as I would soon learn, her definition of family was a very exclusive club, and I was not a member. For about a week, there was peace. My mother, true to her word, had paid off the arrears, and the foreclosure proceedings were halted. She called me twice, her voice overflowing with a saccharine gratitude that felt completely alien. She spoke of a new chapter for them, how my generosity had been the wake-up call they both needed. Ethan, she claimed, was diligently searching for a job, humbled and motivated by my sacrifice. I didn't believe a word of it, but I clung to the fragile hope that maybe, just maybe, this time would be different. Leo and I started to breathe again, talking tentatively about a new savings plan, a new timeline. The wound was deep, but we were determined to heal. The illusion shattered exactly 8 days after the transfer. I was at home, working remotely, when my phone rang. It was an unknown number, but something told me to answer. It was Ethan's. Hey, sis, he said, his voice breezy and casual, as if he hadn't just been a party to draining my life savings. Mom lost your new number, so listen, I've got this amazing opportunity. I felt a cold dread creep up my spine. What do you want, Ethan? Okay, so you know that crypto stuff? I met this guy who is an absolute genius. He's developed this new coin and it's about to explode. We're talking 10, maybe 20 times return in a few months. It's a sure thing, but the buy-in window is closing fast. I just need a little bit of seed money to get in on the ground floor. I was speechless. The audacity, the sheer, unadulterated entitlement was breathtaking. He wasn't even pretending. There was no shame, no humility, no recognition of what had just happened. He simply saw me as an open wallet, a resource to be tapped. No, I said, my voice dangerously quiet. Whoa, what? What do you mean no? He scoffed. Maya, you're not listening. This is how I pay you back. I'll make back that 32 grand for you and then some. This is for you, really. The lie was so insulting, so transparent, it was almost comical. The answer is no, Ethan. I don't have any money. You and Mom took it all, remember. That's not fair, he whined, his voice rising. That was to save the house, that was for the family. This is an investment. Don't you want to help your brother get ahead? I am not giving you any more money, ever, I said, the words coming out like steel pellets. You need to get a job and sort out your own life. The Bank of Maya is closed. There was a stunned silence, and then I heard him mutter something away from the phone. I heard my mother's voice in the background, sharp and angry. Then she was on the line. Maya, what is your problem? She demanded, all pretense of gratitude gone, her voice dripping with venom. Your brother comes to you with a wonderful opportunity to make something of himself, to pay you back, and you just shoot him down after everything I've done for you. I laughed. It was a bitter, ugly sound. Everything you've done for me? What exactly is that? I just gave you $32,000. I just sacrificed my entire future to clean up a mess that you and your precious son created. Sacrifice? Oh, please, she sneered. It's just money, Maya. You can always make more. This is about respect. This is about family. Ethan is trying and you're stepping on him. He's my son and I will not have you treating him this way. Every word was a hammer blow against the fragile hope I'd harbored. The truth was laid bare, raw, and undeniable. It had never been about saving the house. It was about enabling Ethan. The $32,000 wasn't a lifeline, it was just a refill. He's your son, I repeated, my voice hollow. And what am I? What have I ever been to you? I expected her to backpedal, to offer some placating lie, but she didn't. Instead, she leaned in, her voice dropping to a low, chilling whisper, and delivered the blow that would change everything. You know, I'm glad you asked, she said, her tone dripping with years of resentment I had never fully understood. Ethan is my son, he needs me, he depends on me. You were always just there, so independent, so capable, you never needed me. She paused, letting the cruelty hang in the air before delivering the final, fatal strike. You're not really family, Maya, you're just an obligation. Ethan is my real son. An obligation. The word slammed into me with the force of a physical impact. It wasn't just an insult, it was a redefinition of my entire existence. My love, my loyalty, my sacrifices, they weren't gifts from a daughter. They were dues paid on an unwanted responsibility. I wasn't a cherished part of a family. I was a line item on a budget, a box to be checked. The phone was still pressed to my ear, but I couldn't hear anything over the roaring in my head. My vision blurred. My hands started to shake. I felt my entire world, the one I had worked so hard to prop up, shatter into a million pieces. I don't remember what she said after that. I don't remember hanging up the phone. The next thing I knew, I was sitting on the floor of my living room, my back against the wall, tears streaming down my face. But they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of rage, of grief, of a profound and sudden clarity. The fog was gone. The weight of obligation lifted, not gently, but ripped away, leaving me raw and exposed, but for the first time seeing everything as it was. She hadn't just broken my heart, she had set me free. When Leo came home that evening, he found me sitting in the exact same spot, the room dark around me. He rushed to my side, his face etched with worry. Maya, what happened? What's wrong? I looked up at him, my eyes clear. She told me, I said, my voice steady. She finally told me the truth. And as I relayed the conversation, word for devastating word, I didn't cry. I felt a strange and terrible calm settle over me. The fight was over, I had lost, but in losing, I had won something far more valuable, myself. The line Leo had talked about wasn't something we needed to draw anymore. My mother had drawn it for me in thick, black, permanent ink. I was on one side and they were on the other, and I knew with absolute certainty that I would never, ever cross it again. That night, something inside me shifted permanently. The grief was still there, a deep, aching chasm where my love for my mother used to be. But alongside it, a new feeling began to grow, resolve. It was a cold, quiet, and incredibly powerful thing. The Maya who would do anything to win her mother's approval, the Maya who saw herself as the family's designated fixer, was gone. She had died on the living room floor, a casualty of that final, brutal truth. Leo sat with me for hours, listening as I processed everything. He held my hand, his presence a silent testament to a love that was real, unconditional, and freely given. He didn't offer solutions or platitudes. He just validated my pain and my anger, letting me feel it all without judgment. "What do you want to do?" he finally asked, his voice soft in the stillness of the night. I looked at him, the path forward suddenly, strikingly clear. "I want to be done," I said. "Completely and utterly done. I don't want to see them. I don't want to speak to them. I want to take the life we were building and build it far away from them." A faint smile touched his lips. "Okay," he said, "then that's what I'll do." The next day, I began the process of my quiet disappearance. It wasn't dramatic. There were no angry letters, no final, tearful confrontations. A confrontation would imply that their opinion of my decision still mattered. It didn't. I was simply closing an account. The first step was the easiest. I went into my phone and pulled up my mother's contact. My thumb hovered over the block button for a second, a flicker of a lifetime of habit trying to hold me back. Then I pressed it. A small pop-up asked for confirmation. I pressed block again. A wave of relief, so pure and potent it made me dizzy, washed over me. I did the same for Ethan's number. And for my aunt, my mother's sister, who I knew would be weaponized as a flying monkey to relay guilt-laden messages. One by one, I severed the digital tethers. Next was social media. I didn't delete my accounts, that would have seemed like a statement. Instead, I meticulously went through my settings and blocked every member of my family, every mutual friend I knew was more theirs than mine. I untagged myself from old family photos, watching my image disappear from their curated online histories. It felt like erasing a ghost. I was methodically removing any trace of the person they thought they knew, the obligation they had taken for granted. The hardest part was knowing they would try to reach me at work. I preempted it. I sent a carefully worded email to my direct supervisor and HR explaining that I was dealing with a difficult family situation involving harassment and that any calls or messages from my mother, Carol, or my brother, Ethan, were to be blocked and I was not to be disturbed. It was humiliating to have to admit, but it was a necessary shield. In the days that followed, a profound quiet settled over my life. The constant low-grade anxiety that had been my companion for years began to fade. I no longer flinched when my phone buzzed. I no longer rehearsed conversations in my head, preparing for the next demand, the next guilt trip. The silence they left behind wasn't empty, it was peaceful. Leo watched the transformation with quiet pride. "I feel like I'm meeting you for the first time," he said one evening as we cooked dinner together, laughing about something trivial. "The real you without the weight of all that on your shoulders." He was right. I felt lighter. I started rediscovering parts of myself I had suppressed for years. I took up hiking, something I'd always wanted to do but never had time for. We revived our house hunting plans, starting from scratch with a new, smaller savings goal. The $32,000 was gone, a painful ghost in our bank account, but it no longer felt like a loss. It was the price of my freedom, and it was a price I was willing to have paid. Of course, they tried to breach the wall. About 2 weeks into my silence, I got a flurry of emails to my personal address, which I'd forgotten to block. The first was from my mother. "A subject urgent. Maya, I don't know why you're doing this. This silent treatment is childish and cruel. I said things I didn't mean in anger. You know how I get. Pick up the phone. Your family needs you." So I read it, felt a flicker of the old pain, and then deleted it without a reply. The next one was from Ethan. "A subject seriously. This is low even for you. Mom is a wreck because of you. You're tearing this family apart over a stupid argument. You need to grow up and apologize to her." Deleted. They kept coming for a few days, a mixture of feigned concern, angry demands, and attempts at gaslighting. They painted me as the villain, the unstable, cruel daughter who had abandoned her loving family for no reason. Not once did they acknowledge the words that had caused it all. Not once did they apologize. Their messages only served to reinforce the correctness of my decision. Finally, the emails stopped. The silence returned, deeper and more permanent this time. I had successfully vanished from their lives. I was a ghost in my own family, and I had never felt more alive. Months bled into one another, painting a new landscape for my life, one of tranquility I had never known. The absence of my mother and brother wasn't a hole, but a space that filled with better things, with laughter during weekend trips with Leo, with focus as I excelled on a new project at work, and with the simple, profound joy of a quiet evening without the dread of an impending phone call. The ghost of the $32,000 still lingered, a reminder of the price of my peace, but it no longer had power. It was scar tissue, tough and healed over. Leo and I were starting to feel like a normal couple. We celebrated our anniversary, and for the first time, I didn't have to spend half the evening fielding texts from my mother about some manufactured crisis. We reopened our savings account, naming it Our Future Too. Every dollar we deposited felt like a brick in the new foundation we were laying, a foundation built on mutual respect and genuine partnership. The attempts to contact me dwindled to nothing. I learned through the grapevine of more distant, neutral relatives that the initial narrative was that I was going through something and needed space. This soon morphed into the more dramatic story of me being an ungrateful daughter who had cut them off for no reason. I let them spin whatever tales they wanted. The truth was my own, and I didn't need to defend it to an audience I no longer cared about. One person who did reach out was my mother's cousin, Sarah. She and I had always been friendly in a distant sort of way. Her message was cautious. Hi, Maya, I hope you're doing okay. I'm not going to ask what happened because it's none of my business, but Carol is telling people some wild stories. Just wanted you to know I'm thinking of you. I sent a simple reply, thanks, Sarah, I appreciate that, I'm doing very well. It felt good to assert that. I was doing well, I was thriving. The toxic limb had been amputated, and the rest of my body was healing at an astonishing rate. About 6 months after my disappearance, Leo and I were pre-approved for a small home loan. It wasn't for our dream house. The down payment was much smaller than our original one, but it was a start. It was ours. The excitement was immense. We spent our weekends visiting open houses, hand in hand, dreaming of paint colors and garden layouts. For the first time, my future felt entirely my own. It was during this time that I got another message from Sarah. It was a single cryptic sentence. You might want to know that the bank situation with your mom isn't as resolved as she let on. The cold knot formed in my stomach. I had assumed the $32,000 had solved the problem permanently. That was the whole point. I typed back, what do you mean? Sarah replied a few hours later. I don't know the details, but my husband saw an official-looking notice posted on her door the other day. It looked like a legal document. A legal document, my mind immediately went to the foreclosure. But how? I had given them the money, they had paid the arrears, the immediate threat was gone, what could have happened? A part of me, the old Maya, wanted to panic, to call, to find out what was wrong and how I could fix it. But the new Maya held her back. This was not my problem. I had drawn the line, I had paid my dues, I had bought my freedom. Whatever this was, it was on the other side of that line. I thanked Sarah for the information but didn't press for more. I told Leo about it and he held me close. You did your part, he reminded me. You did more than anyone could have ever asked. Whatever is happening now is a consequence of their own choices, not yours. He was right. I forced myself to let it go, to focus on our own life, our own future. We put in an offer on a small but charming starter home on a quiet, tree-lined street. It had a little porch and a big backyard, perfect for a garden. To our shock and delight, our offer was accepted. As we were signing the final papers for our new home, a process filled with a dizzying mix of excitement and nerves, I thought about my mother's house. I felt a pang of sadness for the memories it held, for the childhood I'd had within its walls, but I felt no guilt. I had sacrificed my own dream of homeownership once for that house. I would not let its shadow fall upon my new beginning. I didn't know the full story yet, but the pieces were beginning to fall into place. My disappearance, which I had intended only as a way to save myself, was about to have an unforeseen and catastrophic consequence for them. The world I had quietly exited was about to be turned completely upside down. We moved into our new house on a sunny Saturday in early spring. The exhaustion of carrying boxes was overwhelmed by the sheer joy of unlocking our own front door. This was ours. Every wall, every window, every blade of grass in the backyard was a testament to our resilience, our partnership, and my painful, necessary liberation. We ordered pizza, sat on the floor of our empty living room, and toasted with cheap champagne, our laughter echoing in the space that we would soon fill with a life of our own making. It was about a month later that the full story finally reached me. It came once again from my cousin Sarah. She called me this time, her voice low and serious. Maya, she said, I have to tell you what happened with Carol and Ethan. It's bad. I sat down on my new porch swing, gripping the phone tightly. Okay, I said, I'm listening. They were evicted, Sarah said bluntly. 2 weeks ago, the sheriff came and everything, all their stuff is in storage. They're living in a tiny, rundown apartment on the other side of town. I was stunned into silence. Evicted, but how? The money, the payment, none of it made sense. Sarah seemed to anticipate my confusion. The money you gave her, the $32,000, it only stopped the immediate foreclosure. Sure, it paid off the arrears, but it didn't clear the second mortgage. The bank agreed to halt proceedings on one condition, that she refinance the entire property under new terms with a stable, creditworthy co-signer. My blood ran cold. A co-signer, I whispered. Yes, Sarah confirmed. She had told the bank that her daughter, the successful software engineer, would be co-signing the new loan. The bank manager gave her a 60-day window to get the paperwork finalized. She had assumed, of course, that you would just do it. She never imagined you would actually disappear. It all clicked into place with sickening clarity. The frantic calls, the emails, the accusations of me being childish. It wasn't just about my refusal to fund Ethan's crypto scam. They needed me, they needed my signature. My good credit and stable income were the final, critical pieces of their plan. The $32,000 was just the bait to get me to the table, my co-signing was the prize. My mother hadn't just wanted my money. She wanted to legally tether me to their debt for the next 30 years. When she couldn't reach you, Sarah continued, she started to panic. She and Ethan showed up at your old apartment building, but the doorman wouldn't let them up. They tried your work, but were told you weren't accepting personal calls. The 60-day deadline came and went. The bank wouldn't grant another extension. The refinancing deal collapsed and the foreclosure was reinstated. This time it was final. I closed my eyes, picturing their arrogance, their absolute certainty that I would be there to bail them out just as I always had. They hadn't just taken my money, they had gambled their entire future on the assumption of my perpetual servitude, and they had lost. What about Ethan? I asked. Did he ever get a job? Sarah let out a short, humorless laugh. Of course not. According to Carol, he's too traumatized by the eviction to work. The truth is, they blew through whatever was left of your money in those 2 months. They bought a new TV, new clothes. They thought they were safe. They thought you were just having a tantrum and would come running back when they really needed you. What happened next had turned their world upside down. The loss of the house was more than just a financial blow, it was a social detonation. My mother had built her identity around that home, her status as a long-time resident in a respectable neighborhood. Being evicted, being forced into a dingy apartment in a part of town she'd always looked down upon was the ultimate humiliation. Their friends, their neighbors, everyone knew. The careful facade they had maintained for years had crumbled into dust. I felt a complex storm of emotions. There was no joy, no triumphant sense of revenge. There was just a profound, somber sense of justice. It was the inevitable outcome of a lifetime of their own choices. I hadn't caused this. I had simply stepped out of the way and allowed gravity to do its work. The story ends there, really. My mother and brother are living in that small apartment, their relationship reportedly strained under the weight of their new, grim reality. Carol, for the first time in her life, had to get a job as a cashier. Ethan is still and likely always will be just Ethan. I hear they blame me for everything. In their story, I am the villain who abandoned them in their time of need. But I am not a villain, I am a survivor. I sit here now on the porch of the home Leo and I built from the ashes of my old life and I feel at peace. The silence from their side of the world is no longer a choice, it's a permanent state. They can no longer reach me, and I no longer have any desire to reach them. The $32,000 was the most expensive and most valuable lesson I have ever learned. It taught me that some family is not a sanctuary but a cage. And it taught me that true wealth isn't about money, it's about the freedom to choose who you love and who gets to love you back. My mother told me I wasn't her family, and in the end, she was right. I am not, I am mine. So I have to ask the people of Reddit, what would you have done? Was I right to just disappear and let the consequences play out as they did?